Today, the head is back. I've painted it, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, we are going to get it fitted on the engine, and by the end of this video, we're going to be running and hopefully driving the vehicle. One or two bits and bobs that I need to do before that, though. I just need to remove this bolt and clean the valve train up, the rocker shaft, and also the push rods. So that's where I'm going to start. I'll set this on the milling machine here. I'm going to centre drill it first. I've not clamped this down, I'm just using the sheer weight of the thing to hold it. 4mm drill. Like that. Get a spanner and see if it's a turn. The easy out failed, so I'm just going to drill it 5.5 and then re-tap it. Right, I made an absolute pig's ear of that, so it's a pathetic effort for someone who actually does this sort of work quite a lot in a professional manner. And now I'm going to snap this tap, hopefully not. If it comes to it, I'll probably end up having to helicoil this at a later date, but for now, fingers crossed, we should be okay. It's as deep as I can get that, which isn't very good at all. Let's try bolt. Well, it's gone in, so that's the main thing. It didn't help, it's gone in but it won't come out. It didn't help that I'm actually rushing this. I should have clamped it down. I should have even done this before it went off for machining, but that's what you get when you're up against it for time. Right, get some bolts. Right, so the head gasket is nowhere near where we need it to be. Right, so I just spent a while there just cleaning up this valve train. Completely stripped it all out and completely stripped it all out and oiled along the shaft there. So the end two are actually on dowels. Oh, I've lost them all. As part of the work that the head has had done, it's had new valves, new guides, but the springs and the collets are the originals. I'm just doing these hand tight for now. So we use a 19mm spanner, or socket even, and get these whipped up from the centre. So I'm just torquing these down now to 65 foot-pounds. I've done all of them but these two. So I'm now just going to go back through them all. Oh, so that one moved a bit. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, that one's gone a bit, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We're starting at the centre. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then just work its way back down. That is me for tonight. So tomorrow, fuel, set the tappets, rocker cover, ignition, and we should be ready. Right, so not much has changed since last night. This is as I left it pretty much. Put the funnel in, we're going to put some oil in, and we're going to build oil pressure, and then we will proceed with setting the tappets, fitting the rocker cover, and potentially getting this ready to start. All I've done since last night is fit the thermostat housing, which is there, and the oil feed pipe for the cylinder head, which is there, fitting new washers, make sure everything's clean before I fitted it. So now we're going to go ahead and put the oil in. So I've just spent a small fortune, 2 cans of oil and 3 cans of petrol, about 30 litres there. I'm using this just to get it started, and then we'll change it after a few hundred miles. If you look at the oil, it's very thin. If you can see, it's almost like water. I personally prefer to use thick oil on these old engines. What I'm going to do is just pour this randomly over that rocker shaft, so we can pre-lubricate everything when we start turning. Before cranking this over, I'm just going to put some WD-40 down these bores, just to give some lubrication on what is actually a dry engine. So, and there's obviously no petrol going in there. So battery is connected, we are out of gear, but we've got no key. Key is there. So oil pressure light is on. Are we ready? No starter motor. The starter solenoid isn't any good. It's working, but it's not connecting. So I'm going to use the camera on there, and I'll just manually turn the engine on by connecting the wire. So while all this oil drains down from the top end here, I am going to fit some new spark plugs. Champion Copper Plus. Obviously we all know about checking the gap, so that one's checked, and we'll just put it straight in. No faffing around with feeler gauges. Just going to go straight in and torque this up to the recommended torque for a spark plug, which is there. I'm going to be setting the valve clearances, and I'm doing this using the rule of 9. So 8 valves, and number 8 is open, so we set number 1, because 8 plus 1 is 9. So what I'm going to do is get the feeler gauge, put it inside that slot. This one will, they're all a mile off. And then when you've got that a nice drag on there, then this is the bit where you need 3 hands. You get a metric 1/2 inch spanner, or an Imperial 13. I'm using a 1/2 inch in a minute. And then holding the screwdriver, we clamp that up. And then we check it, and then we move on to the next one. So the next one to open looks like it's going to be 8 and 6. So that's fully open at that. So 6 plus 3 is 9. Six plus 3 is 9. These will need to be obviously double checked. Right, following day. Today I'm going to try and get this thing to start. So I've had trouble with the inlet manifold, so I'm now going to fit a standard Land Rover manifold. This is the one that came with the engine. I'm not using that because it's not got the hole for the vacuum for the brakes. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm going to use this one over here, which has got the hole in place. I could drill that one, but I don't want to because I might not need it. I might need that on another vehicle that hasn't got a servo one day. I don't know. So I'm going to fit it on here. There's two options. There's one type of setup that just uses inlet manifold gaskets and these just butt up to the head, and there's another type that uses a complete gasket that goes all the way across. So I'm going to use the one that goes all the way across because this manifold is slightly warped. I would use a feeler gauge, but you don't really need one to see that there is a gap there in the centre showing that it is slightly warped. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get this assembled up loosely, I'm going to bolt it up in place, and then afterwards I'm going to clamp these 4 nuts down that hold that to that, because then that'll ensure that everything's gone up to the head and in line. If you don't do that and it's not quite in line, you're going to have a leak. So what I've done here is the bolt there and there are tight, and then now I will go ahead and tighten these 4 nuts, and then that'll close the gap up there, and then I can tighten the rest of these bolts. Couple more bits on now. We've got the distributor in place. I've put a new starter solenoid on, which was a very lucky find, especially on a Sunday. Coils all wired up. Still got a carburetor to do, but I want to check to see if we've got spark. I've put an electronic ignition kit on. There we go, we've got a spark. So we're going to go ahead, put the carburetor on, and then we can try and get this thing to... I'm so close with this now. It's turning on the key, the carburetor's on, the fuel pipe is almost there. It needs a connection down here, a connection at the tank, and we'll have fuel there, choke cables on, ignition we sorted that earlier, air filter I'm not worried about that at the moment, but we're so close. But spent the last hour and a half probably trying to design a system so I could use the Discovery throttle cable that we had on this before and the bracket there. I ended up resorting to the original linkage system, which I had to find out from well, I'd already got that bit fitted, but I had to find all the bit that goes across there, and it now does actually work. The problem that I found was that the system at this side only moves about 1 inch, whereas the carburetor itself needs to move about 3 inches. So that's why I had to resort to this original system. I've got 2 jobs I want to do now, one of which I've been putting off for years, and now it needs sorting more than ever. It's nothing major, but it's going to be a nightmare. So where the fuel filler cap is, that is locked, closed, but it should be there, so you can get the hasp over for the padlock. So them 4 bolts want unbolting and rotating through 90 degrees, whichever way is best. But before I do that, I'm going to get it back up into the air, and I'm going to do the fuel tank to fuel pipe. As ever, I've run out of time. You may wonder why I lifted the vehicle to open the back door to get into the back, and that's because the back door won't clear the Sankey trailer we've got parked here. So I've now got to struggle to get into the back of this, and then remove this piece of wood, and we can get down into there, onto that fitting. This is just a standard length of rubber pipe. I'm just going to send straight through, and then we'll sort the other end out when we get to the bottom. For now, this can go on. I'm going to do that in a minute, and then I can put these inspection plates back on. So that's the floor all back down. I put a piece of wood in there to just keep that, to keep anything that has to come in here, just keeps it off the mat then. So yeah, that's the back of the Land Rover. Got the oil cooler in there for the TDI conversion. Floor plates are in the front of there as well. So yeah, right. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I've actually already had this running. And all I've done to get it to run is just run it into a little 1 gallon can, and that bolts to stop the fuel dropping back out. So what I'm going to do here, that is the new pipe. Sorry about the lighting. That's the new pipe that we've just fitted, and I'm just going to cut the copper one about there and then just splice them two in together. Might remember a while ago in the first video I filled this tank full of old petrol just to try and flush it out of diesel. So I'm just going to drop that now. In line. I had no idea, so we're just going to send it anyway. Oh, look at that, look. Straight in. You would not believe, looking at all that mud down there that had gathered up here over the years. Them 4 bolts come undone and they went back in again. So we've now got this all secure and locking as it should. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go for the key. So I'm just going to start this up now, check the oil. So all the choke. And there we have it. I'm just going to let that warm up and then we're going to set the timing. Right, I've been playing around with this for a while now. This, just notice, no, that's oil. Look at the petrol. If you don't know, I'm going to describe it to you what exactly happens here. By altering this, it alters how the engine runs. And we have to set this so it's running so that the spark fires so many degrees before number 1 piston reaches the top. So having played around with this, I'm going for 10 degrees. So around the other side of the engine, we look down here, we will see a mark. That wasn't bad for a guess, so all I've done, right, point on 10. So I set that to 10, point that without smashing it up on the fan, and then I'm just going to adjust the distributor to get that mark to line up with the mark that's on the pointer. So I've now adjusted the distributor to get that to line up, and I'm happy with that. So the distributor wants tightening up, the carburettor needs looking at, and that's all tightened up at that. So every one of these that I do set differently. I don't have a set figure for ignition timing, and the reason for why that is that the figures given in the books for these are different depending on what sort of fuel you're running. But nowadays we only have 95 and 98, whereas back in the day there were 93 all the way up to 98. So I just set it to the ear basically, and just use the light just to make sure we're in the right sort of spot. So we can, obviously it's warm, there's a bit of smoke coming out of there, but can't fault that. Can't fault that. Next job is to service the air filter. There's absolutely nothing to these really. That comes off there. You put that down on somewhere safe, and then you unclip these, pull that off. That should be full of oil. That bit comes off, so we clean that through, and then somehow another nut has turned up. No idea where from. It's definitely off one of these. So all I'm going to do with this now is just give it a quick brush. So I'm going to get a quick brush down, and then it's going to go straight in the parts back for an hour or so. This is the original one off of this Land Rover, and I know it is because it's got that on, and that was put on when it had the Peugeot EM55 engine as a breather for the rocker cover. So the air filters are going back together. I filled it with oil. Everything's been all cleaned out. That goes in there, and then that goes in there. That's the air filter all ready to go back in, all sprayed up and clean. We just need to sort a pipe to go onto the carburettor there. What I've started doing in recent years is when I clean the air filter out is just write the date or the mileage of when you last serviced your engine. So every time you open the bonnet you've got a nice visual reminder as to when to do it next time. I ended up using this tube here. I was intending to use that for a different vehicle, but I need it and I need it now. So that's the way it's come out to be. Still got the levels to check. Got a bit more bolting up on the exhaust, but tomorrow this thing will drive down the road. Spent the morning bolting the last remaining bits on, and now we're going to test drive it. So I do have somewhere I want to take this afternoon, but for now this will do. And next week, after it's had some miles on it, we're going to do some running adjustments.